If you are interested in learning how to build higher quality fiberglass sheets and panels at home so that you can build a hardtop or a Dodger for your sailboat, or maybe panels for your RV, you have come to the right episode. Now, this is a follow-up episode to one we made a week or two ago, where we just very simply made a 2-layer thick with biaxial glass fiberglass panel on the simplest of sheet molds. We basically took our work table here and we put 1 layer thick of packing tape over the surface, and I think our camera will even maybe pick that up there. You can see we've got some fiberglass residue, and that worked to build the simplest of panels. But when you pull it off of the mold, you can see these little overlapping layers and imperfections. This video, we are going to be using a mirrored surface, which is very, very nice, and we are going to build a molded gel coat surface on this one, and we're going to finish with some peel ply. So this is going to be a high caliber. We're taking your panel building experience to the next level. Now, we are going to be using some high quality resins. We're probably going to be using, I think, the iso polyester, which is what we built our 29 footer out of there in the background. But if you've been following the channel, we also use a lot of the vinyl ester. And of course, we source this from Fiberglass Warehouse. Those folks have everything you would need to build a boat, repair a boat, and you can use a Fish Bump TV discount code to save some money. We've also got some gel coat we're going to be applying, and we're going to jump right into that. Now, you'll notice we've got 2 different containers here, again from Fiberglass Warehouse, but you'll notice this says without wax. If you are building a molded panel or surface like we're doing today, you would want to use gel coat without wax, and typically I usually prefer to buy gel coat without wax and then add wax to it as needed. This would be the alternate. You can see buy gel coat with wax. But you wouldn't want that, because when you apply it to the molded surface, the wax and the gel coat will float to the surface and create an issue with our layers of fiberglass that we're going to put behind it. So if you've never molded something or seen something done like this, you're going to learn a lot today. And by the end of the episode, you will know how to build your own sheets and panels for whatever project you folks at home might have going on. Now, usually a good idea to put on some PPE of some kind. We are in a well-ventilated shop, and just for audio purposes today, I'm not going to be wearing a respirator, but 3M and others, you want something that's a high-quality cartridge filter that's going to eliminate any of your heavy fumes and smells. Now, we've already poured up some gel coat here. We've got about 7 ounces or so, but I want to be sure before we apply the gel coat to talk a little bit about mold surface and preparation. Now, y'all will notice we've got some Orca shimmer here. This is from Orca Composites, and it is a mold release compound. You got a little foam applicator in there, and if you've been following the channel, you'll know that like when we were building our big fiberglass hardtop back here, which this was for our 29 footer, and we built a hardtop, and we're going to be installing it. There's a lot of footage of us applying wax to that. And even like in the past when we've used a big panel to build a 4x12, and you'll notice this has got a non-skid texture. And the only way you can keep the gel coat from sticking to that is by using a quality mold release wax, which if you want to see how we built the hardtop, we've got a 13 video series. Again, if you want to learn the intricacies of the trade, that would be the episode to follow. But it'd be very important. Now, we've already waxed this and allowed it to cure, but typically you would apply this in a circular motion and half lap it, like overlap in every direction. Let it kind of haze off a bit, and then typically we would use just a good terry cloth towel, something you'd buy at your standard big box store, and you want to be sure to get all that wax residue off. Now, we waxed this surface a total of 5 times this morning. A lot of times when we have a new panel or something that hasn't been used in a while, 5 to 7 coats is pretty typical, especially on fiberglass parts. Now, a lot of people have been commenting about using plastic sheets and different kind of polymers like Formica or something else, glass panels, and that can work, but I've always been a fan of putting some wax on everything on top of that, just to be sure it doesn't stick, because the last thing you want is a stuck part. So your wax is very critical. Multiple coats, overlapping coats, and do it very meticulously and allow it some time to dry. So we've went ahead, as I said, and we poured up our gel coat. and we've got some MEKP here, or methyl ethyl ketone peroxide. Now, if you buy from Fiberglass Warehouse, they're going to typically send like a smaller container of MEKP. I like buying these little dispensers. Matter of fact, here's a brand new one. You can buy these, and it's much easier to dispense your activator, catalyst, hardener. And we're going with about 4.5 cc's or so for the amount of Gelcoat I have. Now, we are mixing this catalyst this Gelcoat fairly hot today. And y'all will hear me on the channel when I talk about mixing Gelcoats or resins hot. The cooler it is, or the faster you want your Gelcoat or resin to cure, the more catalyst you would add. And if you're not familiar with the range we typically work in, like today, we've got 66 degrees here on our surface, which usually at the absolute bare minimum with Gelcoat and fiberglass resins, about 60 degrees is the bottom. So we're within working spec. Generally up to about 90 or 95 degrees is as hot as most people can work with Gelcoat, because the hotter it is, the faster it cures. So this morning, because it's on the cool side, we are going much closer to that 2% by volume, which is on the upper end of your recommended ratios. If the weather is very hot, you could reduce that down to about 1% by volume. Matter of fact, I've got a little cheat sheet here to kind of show you, like if you had 32 ounces, it's 10 to 20 cc's, down to like 4 ounces, 1.25 to 2.5, and then 1 ounce of Gelcoat is about 10 to 20 drops. And that's a general guideline. The more you're mixing to in a container, the faster it's going to cure. So you're going to want to be sure to adjust for temperature. Again, we've got other videos that explain that in further detail as well. And I want to welcome everybody. If you're new to the channel, my name is Joe Buskins. This is our family's boat shop. I'm a second-generation professional boat builder and a 100-ton licensed captain. We've got well over 100 videos here on the channel, with our main focus of teaching you folks at home how to learn all about the amazing world of fiberglass, Gelcoat, epoxy, and composites in general. And again, we grew up here in the shop and even build boats to completion. So we've had a lot of experience working with these components, and I'm really happy to share with everybody. We've got folks watching all around the world these days, and it's amazing to me the response we've been getting. Very, very positive. So thank everybody, man. Appreciate y'all watching. So it is very, very important, and sometimes I will do this where we'll mix in one container, and I want to be absolutely sure that we don't have any spots that are not activated. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to transfer this to another container. And there's ways to calculate the volume. Now, a lot of what we do here is just based on my experience, but we do have videos here on the channel showing how we calculate how many ounces or quarts of different materials we may use. Now, one reason I did that, again, is sometimes you will have uncured material on the side of the original container, and by transferring it to another, sometimes you can eliminate the chance of having unmixed Gelcoat. Important to wear some gloves though, and some eye protection. You would not want to get this in your eyes. And we're just doing this in the simplest form possible. We're just using a 3-inch bristle brush today. We want to be sure that there aren't any loose fibers. Now, one thing you can do if you were wanting to spray it, there's a company called the Gelcoater that makes a very good large spray rig designed for Gelcoat. It's got a 4.8 millimeter tip, which, if you'll notice, the Gelcoat is quite thick compared to paint. So you're going to need a specialized spray rig. And if you're curious what we use when we're building a boat and spraying gallons and gallons in a mold, we would use something like our big 5-gallon pressure pot there. Now, one other thing I've done with this panel, we have actually used some of that packing tape to secure this mirror on our workbench here. And again, this is just your standard Scotch. We got that from Lowe's or Home Depot. But what I will do, folks, is try to do or put a link to everything we're using that should be mixed. Now remember, once you start mixing gel coat, you don't have that long. You've got about 10 or 15 minutes. I may have to mix just a little bit more there. Generally, you want about 15 to 20 mils is what you're going to want for your gel coat, which you may wonder what that looks like. That is a piece of gel coat that measures out, should be pretty darn close to where we typically like to see things. That's going to be about 25 thousandths of an inch. So that is about what we're looking for. And on the very top end, you could use like a dime kind of as a gauge, and you can get an idea from the minimum to the maximum thickness. You do not want to apply gel coat too thick, because if you do, it can crack over time. If you apply it too thin, it'll be transparent, and you can have issues with the following layers of fiberglass resin kind of eating through the gel coat. So there is a balance there. Now I do have some questions sometimes about using wax other than a specific mold release wax, and I have had some of my viewers mention that they've had success with just using like a high quality fleet wax or a carnauba based wax. But I generally, just because of the importance of it, it's very important that your wax does its job. If it doesn't, you're going to have a stuck part, and a stuck part is not good. That is not good at all. Now, we're just making this panel for you folks. This is not something I really need in the shop, but we had such a good response on our previous video, I thought I would share kind of the next phase. That was about the perfect amount of gel coat, folks. That's what we like to see. And again, this can be sprayed, but if you folks are at home, you know, you certainly can start your journey making this kind of stuff without spending a ton of money. Kind of start with the basics. That looks pretty decent. So we were about right. That's a 30 by 24, and it took about 7 ounces to get what we need. Now, what I want to do, a lot of folks again ask about cleaning up our products. I want to make sure our brush is as clean as possible. And then we're going straight to our little acetone bucket. And important to keep a lid on there, and important to remember that acetone is highly flammable. So we are going to give this gel coat, it's going to need a couple or 3 hours to cure, but there's almost always something else to do in the shop. So our brush is fairly clean. We've got our station here kind of tidied up. Now, one thing I did want to mention is I always like to strain my gel coat through a filter. Now, this is just some screen material from your local hardware store, and it does a good job of filtering thicker materials. But if y'all will follow me, I wanted to show you another step or two, which time is money, and we want to work efficiently. That's a cool little tool. Now, a lot of times we'll use just standard scissors to cut fiberglass, but we've moved over to our big cutting table, and I've already taken some measurements. We know we got a 30 by 20, so I've marked out some dimensions here so that we can cut our pieces of biaxial. We're going with 2 layers of the 1708 biaxial. And I want to demonstrate, this little thing's like a little battery powered skill saw for fiberglass. And man, it does an amazing job. Oh, gotta have some long arms there. And then we're gonna be cutting right across the middle as well. Now this, one of those things, again, you certainly don't have to have one of these, but they're not much more than a good pair of scissors. They are rechargeable, and again, I'll put an Amazon link. It's a little zip snip. And all the stuff that we use here on the channel, folks, from Fiberglass Warehouse. Like I said, there is a discount code. Amazon, there is Amazon links below all of our videos. And that will help you folks find the same materials that we are using here in the boat shop. All right, so just that quick, we've got our 2 layers. Now, something else we're using in this video is gonna be some peel ply. And I've had a lot of folks, again, expressed interest. It comes in a roll. It's kind of a unique material. There are different colors and weaves and patterns, kind of like with fiberglass. It's, I find that these little tools work really well for cutting the peel ply also. A really sharp razor knife can do it. Hard to beat the zip snip though, if you're gonna be doing that. So in a minute, for the sake of time, I'll finish the rest of this up, cutting all of our pieces, have them staged and ready. We're gonna have our peel ply staged and ready. But I also want to tell you folks, if you're enjoying the content we're doing and finding high value in the effort we put into these videos, please remember to like, subscribe, comment, share, and maybe even turn on your notification bell so that when we do release a new video, which is typically every weekend, sometimes 1 or 2 new videos every weekend, I would really, really appreciate it. So we're going to flip back over. Our gel coat is looking quite good. Again, we'll take a surface reading here. We got 64 degrees. Now, one thing you can do, and I've got a video on this as well, like working with fiberglass and gel coat in cooler weather, use something like a little Wagner heat source. Now, you do have to be careful with this because these materials are flammable and you don't want to get them too hot. But if you're trying to hurry things along, sometimes I will just broadcast a little heat or warmth over the panel, and we're just moving back and forth, nice and easy. You're never staying in one spot for very long because you don't want to generate a lot of heat. Now, it's been a few hours, and what we did, you can see now this has fully, it's fully what we call tacked off. It means there is no tack to that whatsoever. And for about the first 35 or 40 minutes, I actually used our little Wagner heat source like I talked about, and we're able to bring our surface temps up to about 80 degrees for about 30-35 minutes, and then gave it another hour or 2 to cure. Right now we're holding at 67, which is still right there in the range of completely workable. And we went ahead and we staged. We've got our 2 layers of the 1708 biaxial, got a couple layers of 1 ounce mat, and we've got our peel ply staged and ready. Now, that is a big part of doing quality fiberglass work at home, folks, is getting your materials laid out and prepped beforehand. Now, one thing we did a video on a couple weeks ago that was pretty popular, we just took different materials. Like this is actually 1 layer of CSM, and we measured very carefully how much resin it took. It took about 2.5 ounces to do 1 square foot of that. So as you can see by this panel, there's easily 4 square feet there. So we need at least 10 ounces per layer of the CSM on this panel. Same goes for the biaxial. It requires about 2.5. So we're going to need, factoring in the roller and the peel ply and everything, 40 plus ounces. I would say probably between 40 and 48 ounces. And that is something you can go back on, because I know a lot of folks are like, how do I know how much resin or how much gel coat I'm going to need? And we've got information for you like that. Now, we have decided to go ahead with the iso polyester resin, even though this is tooling, which means you might use it. Tooling is another word for building molds, but it just means it's a higher quality polyester resin. Now, just because this is a demo panel, we're using this because it's less expensive than our vinyl ester. But if you were building something that you needed high temperature resistance, high elongation properties, just stronger in general, vinyl ester would be the way to go. And the vinyl ester resin from Fiberglass Warehouse is the best I've ever used. This stuff is excellent. You can see us using it in other episodes and other videos here on the channel if you're curious to see how it works. Now we're going to go ahead and pour up. Like I said, I think we're going to go ahead with, about 40 ounces or so and we've mixed this up well. Very important to do so. Matter of fact, you know what I'm going to do? It is quite cool, but I'm gonna go with 32 ounces instead of the 48. 32 is about as big a batch as we typically make when we're doing projects like this. Especially you folks at home, I want to be sure you got a good handle on how to do this. If you make too big of a batch, sometimes it'll generate heat within itself and you may have trouble getting it all used up before it starts to kick or cure, and you don't want that. That's not a good thing. So per our chart there, for 32 ounces on the very high end at 2% plus, we need at least 20 cc's. And I'm going to see if I can see where 20 cc's is here in this little graduated cup. I'm actually going to go a little hotter than that, and that's okay to do because the temperatures are cool and we are working on fresh gel coat, and we want to be sure that the first layer kicks off quite fast, because if you don't, the resin can kind of eat into your gel coat and create a condition they call an alligator. It like will wrinkle the gel coat up underneath, and you do not want that to happen. So very important to get plenty of catalyst. And again, we're using the MEKP, or methyl ethyl ketone peroxide. Very good thorough mix, always very important. Scraping the edges, scraping the bottom, rotate left, rotate right. Now after we mix, I'm a big fan of going back into a pan like we've got here, a roller pan. That will kind of allow the resin to breathe a little bit and stay relatively cool. If you mix in a pot like this, it creates an exothermic reaction. The chemical reaction starts to generate heat or warmth. The warmth speeds up the cure. As it cures, it generates more heat, and you got this runaway effect. So I've seen people, like, you never want to make the mistake of mixing like a whole gallon at a time unless you were like laying up, or like when we were laminating in our boat and you're building big parts and using a lot of resin really fast, you can mix bigger batches. Now some of these resins will change colors drastically when you put catalyst in. This polyiso did not. They do make a dye that can go, a dye concentrate. This is from Norox. Sometimes it's hard to find this though online. We've been struggling a little bit. I bought that from one of our local sources, but I'm hoping the availability on that will get a little bit better. All right, now here we go, folks. Into the pan we go. I've already got my roller and my brushes prepped and ready, and this is going to go fast, pretty darn fast, folks. We try to work quick and make good use of y'all's time and my time. Growing up in the boat business, you don't want to drag this stuff out. Another little trick we show here in the shop, we're using a roller, but we always wrap it in blue tape, and that's going to get all those little loose fibers off of there. Very important to work neat, work clean. There you go. Load up our roller, and we'll go ahead and get a coat, a base coat on. Now, when you're molding something, a lot of times heavier fabrics like 1708 or woven, they may create a condition called print through. Basically, the texture of the fabric sometimes can show through on the molded surface. So to kind of combat that, a lot of times what we will do is, even though the 1708 already has a thin layer of CSM on the bottom, for this particular part, I want to show you how we would do it if we were building like a boat or a part that you really want to preserve the best cosmetics on the surface as possible. We're going to go ahead and put a layer of 1 ounce CSM down first. Always like to wet underneath it if possible. Just back and forth. We're going to start in the middle, work our way out. Now, even though we only gave this a few hours of cure time. You could certainly wait or let it go longer. When we're building boats, it's not uncommon to spray the gel coat and then do what we call a skin coat, which would basically be 1 or 2 layers of CSM. We would do that the next day. Typically, we would apply the skin coat, we would let that cure, then we would apply our heavy laminates. But for something like a sheet like this, you can move forward a little faster. All right, that looks pretty good. You see how quickly we wet that out. Now we are going to be going to a layer of our 1708 biaxial, which wasn't really that popular when I was a young man. We grew up working with just woven and matte or CSM, but there's some advantages, some strength and weight advantages. And what I like about it is you get a layer of heavy reinforcements and the CSM all in one coat. And if you want to build a panel fast and strong, that's the way to do it. All right, start in the middle again, and we're just methodically wetting this out, letting that resin soak right through. And then we're going to be using our little grooved roller or bubble buster to work that resin in. Just remember, when it's hot weather, you've got to work a lot faster. This material is going to kick. And then the thicker you apply this material, like today we're going to be applying 4 layers. The thicker the glass, the more heat it can generate within itself. And so when it's hot weather, you may want to be careful applying as many layers as we are today, or you would certainly want to back the catalyst ratios down. So we're just working on getting some resin everywhere, and you'll notice it is starting to go transparent. It may take a moment or two to work for the resin to work through the fibers. This is a great place to start though, folks. I mean, if I had a young man, and you probably know who you are if you're following the channel, he just commented, said he's 19 years old and wants to be a boat builder. And this is a great place to start, is just learning the basics of molding just a flat panel, making sure you're getting the wax on there. And man, I hope the channel helps you achieve your dreams. That's a pretty cool goal, and there aren't a lot of boat builders out there really in the general population, but we certainly need people that know how to build boats and are excited about that. So thank you so much for commenting and watching our videos. That means a lot. It means a lot. All right, so we're using our little bubble buster now, our little groove roller. This will really elevate the quality of your fiberglass work. We're going to go from one side to the other. Matter of fact, I'll show here where the GoPro can pick it up. A lot of times you can hear it. You can even see the material moving ahead of the roller. That works the air out. It helps work the resin in. And that is what you want. You can hear that shh when first. That is the air coming out of the fabric, and that is what you want. You don't want a bunch of air bubbles in there. There is an optimal fiberglass ratio there, folks. You don't want dry fibers. You don't want your fiberglass to be starved of resin, but you also don't want puddles. This is about what it should look like on the surface. There should be a bit of a sheen, but you shouldn't see big puddles. And that's what I like about a roller, is it does a really good job at moving resin around and putting it where it's needed, and then moving it if there's an excess. Y'all notice I'm going lengthways, going forward, back. Now a lot of times, had another gentleman just comment, said that fiberglass will roll up on his roller sometimes. I always like to clean mine in acetone, my acetone bucket, after I've used it, and then have it staged and ready. Otherwise it can get sticky, and then when you go to roll on the next pass, it can stick to your roller. So sometimes that little trick right there can make the difference. Sometimes it's a little tricky placing larger pieces. A lot of times if you can just get it on the corner, get one corner kind of lined up, usually the rest of it will follow suit. You can shift it. You'll notice before I really start sticking it down, you just want to be sure that everything is where you want it before you make it fast. Now another thing to remember, y'all will notice we're putting the CSM side down. Always want the CSM side down or making contact with your base material, because it holds more resin and it bonds better to surfaces underneath it. This heavier fabric, it doesn't bond. If you were to lay this upside down, it doesn't conform or bond as well to irregular surfaces, and you may not get an optimal bond. So we always place the 1708 CSM side down. And when we're starting a new panel, like if we're using woven roving, we are going to be using CSM first and then follow it with the roving. The CSM has a real nice cosmetic finish too, but pound for pound, it is not as strong as your long woven fabrics like the biaxial and the roving. Reason for that is the CSM is just little short fibers and hairs that can't transmit load throughout the whole panel. These long fibers here, if something flexes or twists the panel, it helps transmit the load over a large area, and it makes it a stronger, more fiberglass rich panel. Now you see there we got a little bit of whiteness. You can see that needs a little more resin, and we've about used that batch up. That was 32 ounces. We probably are again right on to need somewhere around 44 ounces or so, give or take. See, again, we got a little bit of white fabric, and we can just use that roller to work it back and forth. This is going to be a pretty heavy duty panel. 2 layers of 1708 and 2 layers of the CSM would be a pretty good laminate schedule for like a small boat, on the sides of a small boat. Matter of fact, if you're just catching this video, just prior to this one, we did a video talking about how many layers would go where in different applications on a transom or on a floor. You always want to be sure to get your pan thoroughly clean as well, folks. You don't want to cross-contaminate one batch with another. Want to be sure we're getting as much resin as we can out of our mixing bucket. And I'm going to go ahead and mix just a bit more. So remember, we need about 10 to 12 ounces per. Oh, almost lost it. Let's see, I'm going to go with a smaller one so we can be a little more accurate this time. All right, there we go. I'm going to go with about 12 ounces because we're going to do the peel ply as well, and I want to be sure we have plenty. All right. And I'm going to mix this a little bit hotter than our first batches. So we're going to need about 7.5, 8 cc's or so. I'm going to go closer to 10. We're pushing the limits a little bit, but I do want this. We're trying to get this done for this afternoon. We want to separate it for you guys before we go home. You can speed things along a little bit sometimes. Really good thorough mix, so always want to. Sometimes I tell people to count to 100 or 100 movements or motions. You can get away with a little bit less, but you certainly, it's one of those things I think it's worth spending the time to do. Now you folks, I do really enjoy hearing what kind of projects y'all are working on at home, what kind of boats or projects as far as RVs or aircraft you're working on. So feel free to drop a comment, let me know. I do read every comment. I try my best to respond to them, but it does help sometimes as far as the direction of the channel and the videos we're going to make, like what you folks recommend or suggest or tell me that you're working on or questions you have. And again, folks, we want to do more of this, and as the channel grows, we can justify doing it. So remember to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Totally free to do so. Share with a friend. We may be able to get to the point where we can do a lot more of this kind of stuff with y'all's help. So thank you again so much for your support. Okay, and we are moving right along, folks. You can see how quickly, with the roller and then having a table set up with all your supplies, not wasting a lot of movement and effort. We are getting there rapidly. A lot of people are intimidated by fiberglass and composite work, and there's really no need. There is a system, and there's a right way to do it. My father, I was very fortunate to have a father who was a boat builder as well. Grew up in this boat shop. Matter of fact, my grandparents bought my dad a bandsaw for his 12th birthday. And it's crazy now to think about buying a 12-year-old kid, a bandsaw, but that was a different generation. But he built little wooden boats as a young man. And he built one for himself, and that's kind of how his boat business started. He built a boat for himself, and one of his buddies admired it, and he sold it and built another one, and sold that one and built another one. And that is how our family, especially my father, how the boat business started. Is he was just building small boats and then would sell them to someone in the neighborhood who admired it, and then build a replacement. Then in the 1960s, he was in the Air Force at the time, actually, and fiberglassed his first small boat. So he built a wooden skiff and then fiberglassed the exterior of it. And that was his first experience with fiberglass. Prior to that, he had built wooden boats. And then as we got into the 70s and 80s, when I was a kid growing up, we were building large 37-footers in this shop. That's why the shop is so big. We were building some really big boats. And my brother, Mark, he even built a 53-foot catamaran a number of years ago. So now I want y'all to check this out. So this is where experience and having an idea of how much material, and again, if you want to learn more about that, there's a video where we're working with these panels about how much resin. And you can see how accurately I was able to mix with minimal waste, which is what you want. Now, I was very fortunate to have a father to teach me a trade, though. I know there's a lot of young people out there that may not have that same advantage. And something we have now, though, that my father did not have is stuff like YouTube, where we can share this stuff globally. So it's just super cool. It's just a real privilege to be able to share with everybody. Okay, so we're back to our bubble buster, and we're gonna start. See, we'll just start right here at the end, and the camera can probably pick it up. Now, sometimes when you first start, did y'all notice it rolled up on the roller just a little bit? Sometimes that happens if you just kind of back up a little bit. Very methodically, y'all will notice I'm just starting at one end, going all the way to the other. Very satisfying. Do a quality fiberglass work. And with these panels, there's lots of opportunities and options, and it also opens up your mind to the concept of how to use a mold and surface prep. You would want to do something like this before you got into a more complex part, like when we, again, if you want to jump to the next phase, that series of videos when we were building our hardtop pattern and laying it up, and we will be installing the hardtop on our boat soon. I know a few of our regular viewers are curious what happened. I will tell y'all, folks, it's just a matter of time and money for a guy like me. We're in a time of year where we're not fishing very much, and I've got other projects going on, but we are going to get it installed and have it ready for next year's fishing season. I promise you. All right, I am pretty happy with that. Now, normally, again, go right back in the bucket with your little bubble buster. And now we're gonna go get some peel ply. I'm gonna see if I can do this. Now, my son is behind the camera, but a lot of times when you get these bigger pieces of peel ply, they can be a little bit tricky to place. Sometimes it's nice to have a second person. I always cut the peel ply considerably bigger than the piece that you're going over. That does seem to make it a little bit easier to place it. We're just going to come down nice and easy. We don't want a bunch of wrinkles on it. Oh yeah. Now what peel ply does, a lot of people may not be familiar with it, is it's a way to really smooth out the fiberglass. So when we put this on here, it's going to make it much smoother than it would be. And y'all will notice I'm starting in the middle with just our dry brush. You can see it starting to make contact with the CSM. Sometimes you can pick up on the edge a little bit and just kind of help it work around the parameter. This will give you a much nicer cosmetic finish. It will also remove amine blush or help you work if you're working with epoxy, which is not what we're working with today, but if you want to learn about that, we've got videos about epoxy. But amine blush is a byproduct of epoxy curing, and if you don't remove it prior to your following layers, it can affect the bond of following layers of fiberglass. And when you use peel ply, it actually works against the amine blush. Basically, it kind of cures into it, and when you peel the peel ply off of there, the amine blush goes with it. All right, so we've got that down. That looks nice. Again, very satisfying to do that. Now, usually what I like to do is place it, and then I'll take my roller, and we will just go ahead and saturate it a little bit more. You can see we got a few little air bubbles underneath. We'll kind of work that in, and when this glass underneath cures, when we peel this peel ply off, you'll be much closer to a finished panel. It'll be a lot less sanding and fairing and surfacing for you folks at home, which again, the faster we can do this, if you can do a quality job and get your job done sooner, that's that much quicker you can go sailing or fishing or water skiing or just get out on the water and just enjoy your boat. It's certainly all about saving time as long as it does not compromise the quality of your work. And that was about a perfect estimate on our resin consumption. You can see there that we've got the roller nearly dry. Got our peel ply wet out. A good looking laminate underneath. Now y'all may have seen me use this little trick before. Sometimes when you have a roller though, say you need a little bit more, there's a really cool little tool called a 5-in-1, a painter's tool, and you can scrape out. A lot of times there will be a little additional resin in your roller, and this is a handy little tool if you're getting into the boat shop world. It's like $5. It's got a sharp pointy end, a scraper blade. You can use this for prying, opening the lids off of your cans of material, and a couple wrenches for like your spray rigs. And sometimes we even use the end for tapping something down. So they call it a 5-in-1. It's got, or 5-in-1. It's got 5 or more uses. Let's put it that way. So I want to show y'all another little trick too. Y'all follow me out to the edge of the shop. Now, after you finish using a roller like this, you want to discard this thing safely. A lot of times you can generate heat, especially in the summertime. So I like to just kick it off the roller frame, and I'll let it cure outside the shop, and then we'll throw it in the garbage can. And then our roller right here, as far as simple and easy cleanup, again, going right back to our 5-gallon bucket, our brush goes in, our little 5-in-1. Now the one other thing we are pushed for time a little bit tonight is, again, temperatures are cooling down. We've got our little temperature sensors here, infrared. We've got 65 degrees, which is still in the realm of working with fiberglass, but I want to show you folks, we're going to try to speed this up. Again, you have to be careful, but say for example, we got 65 now, and this is what I was doing to help our gel coat along. You notice I'm about a foot away from the surface, and I am constantly moving. I'll go front to back, side to side, front to back, side to side. And I was able to bring that gel coat surface up to about 80 degrees by doing this, but you cannot leave it. Again, I can't overemphasize being safe, being smart. Let's see if we gained any temperature there. I'll show you. A lot of times you can see we're already up to 78. Now it's dropping as we take the heat source off, but you can see how rapidly. Generally, I don't like to go much over 80 degrees, but if you can bring the temps up, that'll accelerate your cure. All right, folks, we have made it through a full cure cycle, and we are getting ready to separate our peel ply. Pretty exciting to see how nice that turns out. I hope the camera picks that up. Now I get some questions regarding peel ply sometimes, asking can it be reused, and typically the answer is no, or at least everybody I talk to says no, you don't want to reuse it. Now, one of the things about peel ply, not only does it leave a really nice, flat, smooth surface. Oh man, look at that, it looks amazing. You get a much better finish, but if you've fiberglass something and you're gonna want to leave it sitting for a while, it's gonna leave a protective film. So theoretically, we could have like done this, and if say, for example, you couldn't do any fiberglass work or gel coat work till like the following weekend, you could just leave the peel ply on there, and then when you get ready to the following weekend, peel it off, and everything is really nice and fresh and pristine. Now typically that gets discarded, and as a comparison's sake, now this is some CSM or a matte surface that did not have the CSM on it versus the surface with CSM. That also leaves a really nice texture on there and ready to receive following layers of gel coat or even more resin. Now what I did, we had started separating a little bit. I had a little bit of tape right there on the corner, and I believe we've got a little start here. Now I've got some wooden wedges, and what we're going to do is just get that wedge started underneath there, and we are hurrying this process along. There we go. We're going to break this edge just to kind of help release it. Now normally when you're molding a part like this, we might wait a couple days, or in the event of building you can hear it there. See, I'm just kind of taking my time and working that blade underneath, and we'll kind of loosen it all the way around the perimeter. When we were videoing our big 29 coming out of the mold, a lot of people say it's like the birth of a boat, and it's like, if you've ever been around a childbirth, you can't rush it. You kind of have to let it take its course. So that's the way it is with this stuff too. You don't want to rush it too much. We'll try to get these edges worked almost a little bit kind of the same way. Down here in the deep south, we grew up eating a lot of seafood, and shucking oysters is kind of one of those things where you kind of got to find a way in there and then kind of take your time, go around the perimeter. All right, so we kind of got it broke around. That was one of the reasons we did that. That was one of the reasons we did the tape there. There we go, and this is still quite green. When I say green, it takes several days for, it takes several days. Oh man, look at there, folks. For most fiberglass materials to reach a full cure. How about that, everybody? Doesn't that look cool? So you've got a molded, shiny, beautiful molded surface on one side, and then you've got the real nice smooth texture left by our peel ply. And then obviously we could come back and clean the mold. Sometimes you'll get a little bit of residue. Now I feel confident that had I left that cured till like tomorrow, or even given it a couple days, it will come off easier. It'll give the material time to kind of expand and contract a couple times and reach full cure. And that has at least been my experience. So if you want to do this at home, preferably leave it a little while. But that is certainly a big improvement over our previous panel that we did by just using some clear tape and our work surface. But that doesn't mean that this doesn't have a use either. So if you didn't see this episode, you might want to jump back, and you may want to make just a sheet or a panel that you can fiberglass or Gelcoat on, or form up some kind of idea. Now, this should expand your horizons too when it comes to building a mold for something. It gives you the general idea. If you want to replicate something, a lot of times you basically build a pattern that looks like what you want to build, and then build a mold off of it, and you can replicate that part. So I hope you folks at home found that interesting and exciting. If you did, please remember to give us that thumbs up, like, share, comment. Also support the folks that support the channel, like Fiberglass Warehouse. If you want to use some of the same materials that we use on these videos, give them a call. Everything you need to build and repair a boat, you can be found there. Also, our links below our video description on Amazon. So all the little everything from the little temperature probe and sensor, which is awfully helpful when we're doing this kind of stuff, to the safety gear we use and miscellaneous tools and whatnot. So it's Captain Joe here with Fish Bump TV. My son Logan working super hard behind the scenes as my amazing cameraman, and we will catch you folks in the next episode.